I'm Dr. John Avendano, President of Florida State College at Jacksonville, and it is my honor to welcome you to our first ever virtual FSCJ Business Speaker Series event. As we've all become accustomed due to the pandemic and our current state of semi-remote operations and social distancing recommendations, we felt that a virtual event was in the best interest of all of our attendees. So even more so, we thank you for your participation out there somewhere in virtual land. We always look forward to the Business Speaker Series and the new interesting topics we'll discuss. And I know you'll find today's conversation to be both relevant and engaging as well. Since the inception of the Business Speaker Series in the fall of 2017, we have enjoyed hearing from expert panelists and keynote speakers on a variety of topics such as financial planning, public safety, commerce and infrastructure, healthcare, and even our own local culinary scene, just to name a few. And FSCJ is this community's college, and therefore it is our goal and our responsibility to seek out opportunities to learn about our workforce and our industry needs, and to anticipate what is to come and develop ways that we can work together and adapt and meet those needs. Given everything that has happened over the past 6 months, I think that we can all agree that there's never been a time where our flexibility has been tested quite like this. And that's what today's conversation is really all about. Today's discussion relates to the new reality we've all been adjusting to throughout this global pandemic. And while so much of our daily normalcy has been interrupted, the work just can't stop. We must continue to move forward. So in just a few moments, you'll hear from our panel of experts who will talk about the adjustments that they've made in their businesses to keep their workforce, their operations, and their world moving forward. And before we get to our presenters, I'm sure you all know that opportunities like this, like the Business Speaker Series, will not be possible if not for our wonderful community partners who believe in our mission and in strengthening the future of our community through education. So we're especially grateful for our presenting sponsors of this series, First Florida Credit Union. First Florida Credit Union made a generous gift to the college that inspired and provided the financial resources necessary to develop the Business Speaker Series and to host each of these events. And with their support, we are also working to enhance the Financial Skills Academy, which provides certification courses that build the financial knowledge for students, our faculty, and our staff, helping them to become more equipped and knowledgeable in earning, spending, and investing. Thanks to First Florida, we are also exploring avenues that would allow us to expand that education further to serve a broader populations in our community. Now, before I get a chance to introduce our moderator for today's event, I'd like to introduce and thank a few of our trustees at FSCJ who are also joining us virtually this morning. We have our board chair, Thomas Mack McGee, our vice chair for Nassau County, Mr. Mike Bell, our vice chair for Duval County, Mr. Wayne Young, trustee, Ms. Chantel Davis, trustee, Ms. Laura DeBella, and trustee, Mr. Hunt Hawkins. So thank you all for joining us this morning. It's now my honor to introduce our moderator, Dr. Wendy Norfleet. She is the Chief Executive Officer for Norfleet Integrated Solutions, where she and her team work to provide strategic solutions through training, coaching, and business consulting for our corporations and for individuals. This morning, she's going to guide our panelists through a conversation around the adjustments that they've made during this time of great change and time of uncertainty. So before we close, we'll have time to take some of your questions as well. So without any further ado, I'll turn the program over to Dr. Norfleet. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you, Dr. Avendano. I appreciate that. Today, I have the privilege of moderating this session titled Outmaneuvering Uncertainty, How the Pandemic is Reshaping Business. To provide insight into this topic, I would like to introduce our panelists comprised of Jacksonville top local business leaders. And our panelists are Mike Anderson, Director of Consumer Analytics and Insights at Cox Media Group, Michael Corrigan Jr., President and CEO at Visit Jacksonville, Brad Liddy, Chief Operating Officer of Moving and Logistics at Sudeth, and Darnell Smith, Market President North Florida region at Florida Blue. Thank you all for being here. We're going to start by having each of the panelists introduce themselves and answer a question. And keep in mind that this is all experiential. We are all trying to find our way through this. And so hopefully through this panel, we'll get some insight. Maybe we'll get some suggestions on what we can do for our business. So I'm going to have each of the panelists introduce themselves as I call their name. And then they're also going to answer the question, what surprised you most or was one of the biggest challenges you faced during the pandemic? And I'm going to start with Mike Anderson.
Thank you, and good morning, and thank you for having me. My name is Mike Anderson. I work with a company called Cox Media Group, or CMG, which owns and operates a premier collection of TV stations, radio stations, and digital enterprises across the U.S. That includes CBS 47 and Fox 30 here in Jacksonville, by the way, along with a great collection of radio stations. My work focuses on consumer insights and marketing strategy, and basically helping business owners, marketers, and managers connect with consumers. I would say that the thing that surprised me most dramatically early on, we were already in a politically polarized state before the pandemic, but I was still surprised at the extent to which a fundamental kind of public health crisis could become so deeply politicized and polarizing. Many of us have actually witnessed something we now think of as mask rage. I really hope we can take a breath and get beyond that after the election, regardless of which side wins. But by the way, the flip side to that observation, the thing that gives me hope, is that another observation, we have redefined what it means to be someone that is essential. Essential doesn't just mean first responders anymore, or doctors or nurses. Now it means that janitor that cleans up after those doctors and nurses. It means the grocery store cashier, the people who stock the shelves, truckers, delivery people, all of them essential now. I like that, and I hope we hang on to that.
All right, thanks, Mike. And Mike said something really important about essential employees, and don't forget to thank them. I go into Publix often. I always thank them because if they hadn't been open, we don't know where we would be, right? And so we want to make sure we take a minute out during our day, during our week to thank those people. So next I'm going to have Michael Corrigan of Visit Jacksonville answer the same question. What surprised you most or was one of the biggest challenges you faced during the pandemic?
Well, good morning, Wendy, and thank you so much for allowing me to be part of this conversation this morning. I am the president and CEO of Visit Jacksonville. Visit Jacksonville is the city of Jacksonville's official visitors, conventions, and tourist bureau for not just Jacksonville, but all the beaches here in Jacksonville as well. So we're the entity that helps bring people to Jacksonville. I tell my friends over at the Chamber of Commerce all the time, the one thing you have to do before you move to Jacksonville is you have to come visit. And at Visit Jacksonville, we help bring you here that first time. And that's what our main role is. So the biggest surprise to us in our industry was the instantaneous nature of this pandemic. Tuesday of Players Championship Week, I was out at the course participating in a luncheon conversation. And we talked a little bit about the COVID-19 and what it might mean into our industry. Well, 48 hours later, my industry shut down totally. And it was amazing that even though we knew something bad was coming, that we had no idea of how quickly it would happen and the effect it would have on the 55,000 people that are involved in the hospitality industry just in Jacksonville, Florida. So had an incredible impact instantaneously. And for Visit Jacksonville, it really presented a challenge because contractually with the Tourist Development Council and the city of Jacksonville, we were told for years, you cannot market to a drive market. You cannot market to people that can come to Jacksonville that are 3 hours away. And all of a sudden, that's the only market that it made sense to talk to about coming here. And as we opened our beaches and other things that happened, as we started to crawl out of the pandemic, it was that opportunity to invite people much closer to us. So we've had to totally shift and do something totally different than we ever anticipated doing as far as marketing is concerned.
Well, we appreciate the effort you're making because obviously Florida in general and Jacksonville, we get a lot of our business from tourists, from people coming in to visit us. And so I can definitely appreciate that. We're going to have next Brad Liddy, and you're going to answer the same question. What surprised you most or what was one of your biggest challenges that you faced during the pandemic?
Sure. Thanks, Wendy. Appreciate it. Brad Liddy, I'm Chief Operating Officer for Sudeth Moving and Logistics. We move people, businesses, and products, and happy to be here today. I would say the thing that has surprised us and given us hope and encouragement is the resiliency of our staff. Even in the first wave of going virtual for our office staff, that was met with enthusiasm for the most part. And then the resiliency of our staff that are on the front line, our essential workers that work in warehouses, that are truck drivers, et cetera. They have adapted, overcome, and thrived throughout this environment. We have record retention rates as of late. We've had no business disruptions, et cetera. And it's really all thrust upon the shoulders of the spirit that they have from a can-do spirit and ability to get things done. So that has been really surprising, right? There could be lots of distractions, as mentioned previously, and the focus on service to our customers has been at the forefront and has carried the team through.
Okay. And I think many of us have seen people just really rally together. Look with the masks, where people were donating masks and making them. So I think there's some good out of all of this, that some people just really stepped up. So thanks for that. And Darnell, I'm going to have you answer that same question, and then we're going to get into a little bit more detail. So what surprised you most, or what's one of the biggest challenges you faced during the pandemic?
Yes, hello, my name is Darnell Smith. I am the president of the North Florida market at Florida Blue, your local Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Florida company. First of all, let me just say thank you for allowing us to be a part of this. I do believe that Dr. Avendano said it best. Fscj is our city's college, and I'm glad to be a part of this. Several major challenges, as you can imagine. Within the first couple of weeks, we had to make certain that we got over 12,000 people from becoming a workforce that worked in the office to becoming a remote workforce. And so, as you can imagine, that was a humongous feat. But I would tell you, I think the greatest challenge was to make certain that we were continuing to ensure people were getting much needed care beyond COVID-19. Obviously, COVID-19 was a major issue, and it kept a lot of folks from just taking care of themselves and going into the hospitals for the things that were necessary. And so we had to make certain that we were finding ways to ensure that we were allowing them and encouraging them to get the much needed care. Because if you don't, as you can probably imagine, those kind of situations will simply become more chronic in the future. And so it was really important to be able to work through that.
All right, thanks, Darnell. Like others nationwide, Northeast Florida businesses are taking creative approaches to remain agile. Some shifts have ranged from changing how products are delivered to exploring new lines of services. So in addition to that, we are adjusting to consumer trends. Businesses are also facing challenges, ensuring, like Darnell mentioned, safety and well-being of their employees and also their clients. It's important to remember that we're living in extraordinary times, and there's no one size fits all. So what we hear today that works for one company, it may not work for everyone else, but it may give you ideals. So I always think of something, out of rain, sunshine comes. And so sometimes, even though we have bad things and look at previous wars, good things come out of that. And so hopefully today, as we sit back and listen to this, you will get that nugget that you need to kind of maybe shift or further pivot your business. But before we get started into the questions, the detailed questions, I would like to take the moment and we're going to do a poll. We're going to find out, what was your biggest challenge? And so the poll is up. And if you can take a few minutes, not a few minutes, a few seconds to answer it. And then we'd love to hear what your challenge was. And I know this has hit a lot of people hard. I know being a small business owner, I know for me, income was really important. And like many of our panelists mentioned, I did have to do a lot of maneuvering. Thankfully, I'm still in business. So that's really good. Okay, so our results. Whoa, it's employee morale is #1. It was even over loss of income. So we have employee morale, working remotely, access to technology, and loss of income. And this is really interesting. I don't necessarily disagree with it, but it's really interesting. It's telling. Although I think a lot of people were shifting, I think a lot of companies that weren't prepared for that virtual piece did not have all the technology in place. I have a niece and a nephew, both work for very large companies, but they don't work remotely. So they were actually not working for a couple of weeks until they could get the technology in place. So that's really, really important. And we think about morale. I know I work with a lot of companies, and actually I'm working with a new client. And one of the things we had to talk to them about is that you can't let people not show their face when you're having meetings, because that is their only way to connect with you. And when you show everybody just their name, you're not making that connection. And so there are some ways that even with those things that we showed in the poll that you can address. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna hear a little bit more from our speakers, and we're gonna find out what they're doing, okay? All right, so I am going to actually start with Brad Liddy. And over the past several months, the pandemic has contributed to more consumer spending. What strategies has your organization adapted to meet the growing consumer demand? And there's a lot of moving parts going around. So what are you doing to do?
Sure, and we are kind of a complex organization in terms of the different lines of businesses that we support. So I'll attack it in a couple different fronts there so that you get a little bit of a perspective there. But first and foremost, most directly related to supply chain and e-commerce, some of our distribution and fulfillment has been challenged where we are operating at peak volumes in a non-traditional peak season. So it has forced us to accelerate some strategies that we already had on the docket to be more digital in some interfaces. And so we've had to increase our investments in technology, both internally and externally with some providers. And it's been encouraging, right? Our customers have responded well to it. And it's kept people with jobs, right? So that loss of income, we've kept people employed. And it's been part of what's keeping the thrive within the organization a little bit. So a surprising uptick in volume and activity while other businesses may not be doing as well. So that's been interesting to see. But again, the answer there is investment into our technology platforms is really been accelerated. The other part, and I mentioned earlier that we move people and we move businesses too as well, not just logistics and supply chain, but on our people moving side of things, we've gone virtual, right? Just like we are here today, where when you're getting ready to move your home, there's a virtual survey that can be done. And in addition to that, how do we make a homeowner and the personnel that's going into that home feel safe and secure? So advanced testing and kits in advance of showing up at somebody's doorstep. Those are all things that we've done in-house and have responded very quickly to in order to keep our business alive. Okay. And the last piece would be moving businesses, where we help support some of the largest technology companies in the world with that remote work. And then as some of them are starting to come back to work, space planning. How do you make sure that you have people that can maintain a 6-foot distance and not have to wear a mask all day? So it's been interesting in how we've helped enable large companies think through the mechanics of coming back to work.
All right, thank you, Brad. Darnell, I'm gonna ask you the next question, because as with all these moving parts, and you kind of alluded to this in your introduction, but how is your company checking on the health and well-being of your employees? Maybe you can give some tips that we can do.
Absolutely. Well, as you can imagine, our employees are our competitive advantage. They are the keepers of the promise. They, quite frankly, are the product that we put on the streets. And so it was first and foremost really important to us to ensure their overall safety. And so as we went into the pandemic, the first thing we made certain is that we got them into a safe environment, which meant it was important to get them to their homes. And then, of course, to get them all of the equipment they needed in order to be able to work from home. And then recognize the fact that this is a situation they didn't ask for. And so as a result of that, we had to make certain we're meeting them where they are. So it wasn't just a physical component that we needed to focus on, it was also the mental component. We had to make certain we were understanding the fact that, you know, they were serving as teachers, they were serving as the principal in some cases, and really working with multiple members of their family within the home, and how important it was to make certain that we were as understanding as possible as a company. And so we made certain that we focused on the things that that mattered to them. And so we provided articles and ideas to our leaders to make certain that they were engaging the employees, to help them understand how to truly lead a remote workforce, because that was a brand new skill for many of our leaders. It was about making certain that we drive engagement, trust, and provide support. And so we did a lot of the small things. We limited the time frame for meetings to 30 or 45 minutes. We have moved a lot of the meetings from lunchtime and making certain that that is time that really people are truly, taking time for themselves. We're making certain that they're taking their paid time off. Believe it or not, work has really increased over this time frame. And so we have to truly encourage our employees to take that paid time off. But it's listening to them and making certain that we're providing all the different services that are necessary. And of course, engaging them all the time to make certain that we understand exactly what's really happening with them. And so those are the things that we've done to really make certain, once again, that we're focusing on not just the physical health, but the mental health as well.
All right, thank you, Darnell. I love the 45-minute meetings because sometimes I find my day, I am in front of my computer almost 7 hours straight that I have to get up and move around. So I appreciate that. Mike, based on what Brad and Darnell said, have you observed any consumer behaviors that surprised you?
Aside from the ones that we've already covered, there's been one discovery after another. CMG by nature has always been a really research-intensive company. We have to be as a media organization. Our news directors, our on-air teams, our program directors just do stunning work to try and keep these properties connected to the communities that they serve, information, entertainment, and so on. So with that in mind, we have the luxury of this amazing team of people that we refer to as CMG Custom Research, an internal kind of division that focuses on nothing but. And they kicked into gear to immediately begin to kind of assess consumer sentiment, changes in behavior. How are people responding to the virus, to the shutdowns, to all the safety protocols, and not just nationally, but market by market. It's amazing how differently people were reacting from one city or region to the next. Seattle had a completely different experience at the beginning of this than any of the rest of us. New York had a different experience from, say, an Atlanta or a Houston. We were able to monitor the impact on those cities, including, of course, Jacksonville. So we've been kicking into high gear and people watching. We know that with so many people, whether through unemployment or because they were remote working now, home was no longer just the place you went after work. Home was where you went to work. It's where your kids went to school, and it's where you hung out after work and school. So that changed a lot of behaviors in the constituents that we serve. My role is on the media and advertising and marketing side. So all those things became extremely important. So I would say that, beyond that formal research, that custom research, listening to people, our people watching and consumer trend work just kicked into and kind of an always on mindset. Things have been changing really fast. And in the area where I work, a lot of business owners, managers, and marketers rely on us, all of my colleagues, to help them connect the dots and connect to consumers. So all those changes have been really important.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you're monitoring things. I know for me, I have two K through 12 students, and it has been a challenge, especially in March. March through June was especially challenging, helping them finish up their school and trying to find designated areas for them, because you know how with kids, sometimes they like each other, sometimes they don't, right? So it has been challenging. And then we're going to come back around to Michael Corrigan, because we know hospitality is so important here in Jacksonville, obviously the state of Florida, but especially here in Jacksonville. So how does the impact the hospitality industry caused by this current health crisis compare to the one caused by the economic crisis, from the late 1990s and early 2000s, which also saw businesses close and resulted in mass layoffs? So how does this compare? What have you seen?
Well, first, Wendy, the pandemic has nothing to do with your kids getting along. That's going to happen.
I know, I already know that.
Forever. But anyway, yeah, kids getting along is kind of like what's happened in this crisis. This is totally unprecedented, what we're going through right now. We've never seen anything like this before in the history of tourism in Jacksonville. In the the late 1990s, 2000 slowdown, there were governmental relief programs that spurred the economy and fixed a lot of the problems we're talking about it. But this time, you can't really fix the problem until we solve the pandemic that we have, until we come up with that global health solution that's going to fix this. Then you're going to have a period until it's perception of safe that's going to happen to make people start traveling again. So it's going to take quite a while. We've seen some closings of small businesses. We've seen a lot of layoffs at hotels, especially full service hotels and restaurants. But we really haven't experienced the sudden and complete closures of, as we saw in the previous crises. It'll take quite a while before we see that. So there's some bad news and some good news. The bad news is, the airlines are laying off thousands of employees, and Jacksonville International Airport, if you've gone there in the last 6 months, it's like a ghost town compared to what it was doing so fantastic before this pandemic. Sporting and live entertainment, we're still at a maximum of 25% occupancy at those events. So the visitors aren't coming to town for those events, much less happening on that front. And then the good news is that Jacksonville's recovering faster than any other community in the state and faster than most communities in the country. And that's partly because of how our tourism has historically been. We have a unique situation where our tourism is, most of the time, pretty close to a 50-50 blend between leisure tourists and the other is group tourists or business tourists. So when this pandemic hit, the 50% that's business and group tours, that's going to be the 50% that's going to be hardest to get back to where we are. Even when my fellow panelists start having meetings again, it's going to be a while before they start inviting others to come to town and do group meetings. And Florida Blue is a great example they have a fantastic meeting facility. It'll be a long time before they're able to fully utilize that again in a safe manner that their employees feel safe in. So, but the leisure side, we continue to have great progress on promoting what Jacksonville does so well. It's an amazing outdoor place to go enjoy outdoor recreation and relaxation. It's not a theme park city, so there's not a lot of crowded people together. There's 840 square miles to go out and have fun. So we're promoting that, and that's being effective. And so we're seeing that percent of our tourism responding. I tell somebody when I get asked this question a lot about, what's it compared to or anything else. And the only thing I can even come close to comparing it to is if you took the tragedy that happened on 9/11 and added in the Tylenol crisis, you're about halfway to what this crisis is doing to our communities and to our people in our communities. So it's definitely a challenging time, but we're a resilient city and a resilient country, and we'll eventually get back to whatever this new normal is in the future.
Okay. Michael, I have a follow-up question for you. I know the hospitality industry, it encompasses so much, but are there any sectors of the industry that seem to have been disturbed the hardest, or are there some that have been minimally impacted? And how does the recovery look in those various sectors?
Sure, great question. The hardest hit continues to be primarily the downtown hospitality industry. The downtown hotels are the ones that are really hit because a major part of their volume was business travel, and the convention center and convention facilities are all downtown. So they were definitely the hardest hit, and continue to see that. The interesting part of it is the ones that are recovering the fastest. There's two areas that are recovering faster than anywhere else. One is the beaches, and that doesn't surprise most people on this webinar because that was something that was early. The mayor said we're going to reopen our beaches safely, and I believe they did open them safely, and people could come out and social distance very easily. So that wasn't too surprising. The real surprise to us and the industry was how fast the West Side has been recovering. The West Side has actually seen the highest occupancy levels consistently of anywhere in town. And I was doing an interview the other day, and one of the reporter asked me, she said, why is I've lived here my whole life, and I've already heard that, the West Side's a place to go. Why is it doing so good? And my answer was, well, the West Side's the best side. If you're a lifer here, you know that. So, but the reality is what it is it's a heavy worker environment to stay in those hotels. So as Darnell mentioned earlier, when they closed down their facility and had their 12,000 employees work remotely, that gave that particular corporation the opportunity to go and do infrastructure upgrades or improvements that they might have been waiting to do to figure out how to do it with the employees there. So every company in town had the opportunity to go and do the types of stuff we're talking about. It, Brad, when Brad's helping a company move from point A to point B, they have to have the workers that go and do the infrastructure improvements. Most of that groups of individuals are staying on the west side of Jacksonville, and they really have been a blessing to those hotels. We're at about 50% occupancy in Jacksonville, which doesn't sound really good, but it's better than the rest of the state. But in order for hotels to work in a long-term stay open period, they need to be around the 70% range. We were in the high 70 to low 80% back in March before the pandemic hit. So we got a ways to go.
All right. Thank you. And before we continue with the questions, we have another poll question. And our second poll question is, what is your company's top priority during the pandemic? So once again, our second poll question is, what is your company's top priority during the pandemic? We have a couple of choices for you: safety of employees, providing resources for remote work, shifting business models, and providing flexibility in health and benefit plans. That last one was really important for the school system. And I know I'm a big proponent of that. We want our teachers to be safe. Cast your ballot and we'll see what you have. All right. I am so proud to be in Jacksonville. Safety of employees. That is awesome. And the second one was shifting business models. And the third, providing resources for remote work and providing flexibility in health and benefits was last. But I am so glad that safety of employees, because that encompasses so much. That may encompass the plans too. And so it's really important that we're looking out for each other rather than, something that, I think that's the most important thing. We need to take care of each other, okay? Brad, I'm gonna ask you a question. The pandemic has provided greater visibility of our supply chain. And I know that you are, people, businesses, and companies, but how has this exposure influenced your employees' perception of the role they play? Do they see themselves differently, in meeting the needs of the consumer?
I think so. And the best answer I have for this, Wendy, is we are actually in the process of going through an engagement survey during specific to the pandemic to solicit the feedback and get to the numbers of what we can and should be doing. Our frontline workers, our essential workers, they are the only ones throughout this process where we did no pay reductions or anything like that. So that was one kind of acknowledgement from corporate or senior leadership to infuse the importance on our frontline people that are touching products, right? Seeing the value from them and understand it's been a little bit of a challenge because they've been so busy, right? And so we're being intentional about getting a pulse check from them directly and having an open communication channel from them. We instituted a pandemic task force early on in the process and opened up executive town hall meetings once a month so that everybody could hear from senior leadership about what's going on with the company and what's going on with the business. And what we have lagged on slightly across some business units is providing that feedback back upstream through the organization in a very concerted and intentional manner. So that's one thing that we are working towards. I would kind of reference back to my comment earlier about our retention rates. We've had record retention. So that tells me that they are thriving in some of the environment, right? But what do we do to recognize that in a more vocal way as opposed to just giving them more work to do, right? So I've got some other answers down the road in terms of what we've done from a flexibility standpoint, but that's really what we're doing next is we want to get the pulse and then be very intentional about how we respond to that to accentuate their importance to the organization.
Okay, thanks, Brad. Darnell, I'm gonna circle back around to you. And it may be a follow-up to the first question I asked about your, how you're checking on the well-being of your employees. But we also know that company culture is created by what you do and not what you say. And I know you've taken some actions, but can you share with us the actions you've taken to preserve and strengthen the corporate culture amid the pandemic?
Absolutely. Culture is everything. Our culture is a reflection of our beliefs, our values, and our actions. And it represents how we serve our customers and communities, and quite frankly, how we treat each other. First and foremost, we continue to communicate to our employees on all important matters involving our company, and certainly those things that might have an impact on them. So we have numerous employee communications, chat sessions with senior leaders, and the like. We strive to ensure they are engaged and connected to the success of our company, not just that they're satisfied, but that they're truly engaged and connected to the success of the company. And so we have surveys as well to make certain that we understand exactly where they are in that regard. But it comes down to what you do. And so on September 16th, Hurricane Sally hit the panhandle of Florida, where we have approximately 100 employees. And within 24 hours, we knew that each and every one of those employees were safe and well. We provided financial assistance as needed. We connected them to resources in the community. We gave them paid time off until power was restored. In fact, power was out for a good number of them for about 6 days. And so we made certain they didn't have to worry about whether or not they were going to get paid. Once again, this wasn't something they asked for. And we gathered supplies from Jacksonville and delivered it to their location so that they could have what was needed, because quite frankly, as you can imagine, it was very difficult for people to get supplies in that location. Everybody was trying to get their needs met. And so how we treated those employees mattered to all employees. And so I think it really demonstrated, quite frankly, that it is how we treat each other that really matters. We delivered more than $200 million in services to our customers and to our hospital and physician partners. We have provided more than $7 million to support our neighbors within the communities that we serve, who need food, need to pay their rent, their utilities, you name it. And so I think it's, once again, how we treat each other, how we treat our partners, and how we treat our neighbors and take care of our communities. And I think, quite frankly, that helps preserve the culture. It helps our employees understand what really matters and how we can deliver on those kind of things. So I believe that is how we were able and are able to make sure we preserve the culture.
Okay, thanks, Darnell. Do you find that, just a quick question, do you find that since the pandemic, there has been more opportunity for your employees to kind of make those connections, you're more deliberate in making those connections?
Yeah, absolutely, especially with each other. You know, even in the community, I think you all know we do a lot in the community. And so we quite frankly have a survey in which we identify the things that matter most to them from the standpoint of where to provide most of our support in the community. And so then we go about ensuring that we're connecting them to those type of situations. And so I think they've enjoyed it. You know, we've had to do it virtually, obviously, and so we haven't missed a beat. I think people's you know, interests and commitment to serve not only our customers but the community is as strong as ever. And so it's very, very much connected to them and what we do.
All right, thanks, Darnell.
Thank you.
Mike, I have a question, and I know we're talking about consumer behavior, but how did your analysis of consumer behavior evolve? I know you said you had to make you're tracking a lot of things, but how has it evolved with the sudden shift of the pandemic, or did it?
It did. As I mentioned before, you have the luxury of doing a lot of research and a team that does it extremely well. But that all just comes back as statistics, data. And it takes a lot of work on the business side, on the marketing side of our organization to try and turn that information into insights. And that's been a tremendous focal point across the company. Just saying, okay, here's what the studies are telling us, here's what the surveys say, but what might be the implications of all that? I think it's been important to come to the idea that it's very difficult to feel right now like you know everything. That's the thing that we all aspire to do. But we have to get comfortable with the idea of, look, we do not know for a fact what happens next. So we have to be comfortable with the idea of preparing for a range of possibilities because there's a lot of variables here and they're changing really, really fast. I gotta tell you though, it is a really cool time to be in the business of people watching. So, you know, it's just going again back to doing a lot of what we were doing, but finding innovative new ways to do it with a widely dispersed workforce. A lot of folks working from home for the very first time. And I was smiling at a couple of the earlier comments. I've been a remote worker since, I think, 2002. So you're helping colleagues through the idea of moving to a home office and helping us figure out how we're going to stay in touch, stay wired, stay informed, help each other out. You just find new ways to do that. And with our analysis work, doing a better job of just connecting the dots. Okay. So it's not just data, but it becomes a story. Okay. And a story that basically creates a statistical composite sketch of what people are going through and how we can help them. And I think that's been it's a really gratifying component of what we've all been through at CMG.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a follow-up question to that. What do you see for the
Sure.
future of consumer behaviors for 2021?
Oh, that's easy. Look, if only we all had a crystal ball. We don't. But I would say buckle up. And if you run a business, get ready to be ultra responsive and do your plan. But do what we refer to as adaptive planning. Two overarching reasons for this. First of all, and I think Mr. Corrigan alluded to this earlier, a lot of business categories have been disrupted throughout all this. A lot of companies have had to pivot and adjust their business model very quickly. And it could be some time before we're back to whatever normal looks like going forward. So that's one reason to be ready to pivot and ready to adapt. Second, we don't have the luxury of having just this one issue to deal with right now. In addition to the pandemic, we have concerns that are economic, obviously. We have the current high-profile conversation about racial equality, lots of other areas of anxiety and uncertainty. So, all this adds up to a lot of churn and change. I don't think any of us can afford to just sit on the sidelines and wait to see how this plays out. The job of a business and of marketing remains serve customers, serve people, find and serve unmet needs, add value to people's lives. At times like this, people's priorities and their preferences tend to change a lot, dramatically and fast. So the way you serve them may have to change. And with that in mind, it's just important to listen to the constituents you serve, because you know what, if you just pay attention, they will tell you how to succeed if you're paying attention in the right ways.
Okay. So for all you business owners, make sure you're paying attention. Okay. All right. Brad, how's the pandemic reshaped your company's approach to maintaining, I think you have ISO 9000, 2015 certificates. So are there any changes in these certifications?
No changes in the strategy in terms of maintaining and providing high level of quality of service, right? However, the means by which we get there are a little bit challenged in a virtual environment where you're used to on-site visits, on-site audits, that type of thing. So this year we were already rolling out a virtual and electronic auditing systems as well. So we've ramped up our internal audit regimen, right, to be ready if we are audited. But we've also tech enabled that so it has higher level of visibility in a much faster way for senior leadership. So we've seen fantastic results around that. We do have some audits coming up in the fourth quarter here, and those by our outside agencies are going to be done virtually as well. So we feel like we're very equipped and have the technology to help support it, along with the data that can show the regimen and routine and validate what needs to be done.
Okay, thank you. Michael Corrigan, I think we've all heard that necessity is the mother of invention. We have some local tourism-based business owners that really have been creative. They found ways to kind of move forward in this past, 6 months or so. For example, we have Chef Dennis Chan, owner of the Blue Bamboo. He began online cooking classes. I've seen some extras of fitness centers. They've done online where the instructor's online, but you're following, for the fitness. So what has been some of the ways that our tourism industry leaders have used their creativity as gap initiatives to ensure that they're still in business, they're still going strong?
Sure, great question, Wendy. A lot of them have done what we've all done, which is gone virtual. We've tried to use virtual type platforms as much as we could to be able to do our business. Visit Jacksonville created an entire virtual experience website to invite the world to come visit Jacksonville virtually. It's amazing. I get told all the time from Jacksonville residents, I've been here for 20 years. I never knew that existed. I'd never seen that before. But we were able to, because of the library of information we had, we were able to pretty quickly get it started and present ways to show Jacksonville that we hadn't seen previously. And that became a little bit of an advantage because instead of having to get a particular visitor or a particular conference planner to come to your community, you could get them to look at your city a lot faster than they used to. We also, on the conference side of the world, we had already started working on creating virtual tours of facilities here in Jacksonville. We have hundreds of facilities that can be used for small groups up to fill in the stadium. But we never really had a way for those individuals to see those facilities without coming to our community. And you literally now, either on your own on our website or with the help of one of my sales team members, can take a tour of the facility, see everything you want to know, everything from the kitchen all the way up to the entrance room and the exit and the parking and everything else. So that's really been helpful in us staying involved. And remember, Visit Jacksonville and in the tourism industry obviously are looking to welcome the guests tonight, but we're also working to welcome those guests 3 years to 5 years to 7 years away from now. So obviously there's not a whole lot of group tourism that's taking place now, but all the different associations and companies are making plans for the years in the future, assuming that there's going to be a safe way for us to gather. And that really is another angle that Visit Jacksonville and our industry is looking at is in the past, we've never tried to compete with, and we couldn't compete with cities like Orlando and Chicago and Las Vegas and even Nashville is tough to compete with because of the facilities they had, the size of the facilities they had. Well, we're pretty sure that there's going to be a hybrid model that's going to be used for a period of time. And so all of a sudden, Jacksonville with the facilities we have can bid on a conference that used to be 20,000 people, but now it's maybe 400 people, and the rest of the people are attending virtually. So all of a sudden we have the ability to make sure that we can go after that business to satisfy and to take care of that customer. And that's a partnership we have to have with the facilities that are available here in town to make sure they have the infrastructure upgrade needed to be able to have enough technology available to be able to welcome that group in to visit us. So the other last thing we did is that we kept trying to create ways for citizens and visitors to experience stuff live, like going out to Caddyshack Ranch and do a live Facebook Live event, feeding the animals out there, Facebook Live and Instagram experiences at the zoo, and even walking through the Cumber Museum to see the Cumber Museum. Many of us in the community may have never been there, but you had a chance to go visit it virtually. So it really was switching to a much more virtual experience today to whet the appetite for the visitors to come see it in person in the future time.
All right, thank you very much. I know I was in the middle of wrapping up Leadership Jacks when all this happened. And so our last couple of sessions were virtual, and we did a whole music arts day, and it was virtual, but it was awesome. It was just really great. So you're right, a lot of things can be done virtually. And Darnell, I'm gonna bring this round of questions home with you. So I know you've mentioned some of the things, but can you tell us specific tools and resources that you are providing not only for your employees, but for your clients? I'm a big proponent of Florida Blue, and you guys were growing as far as your physical centers, but then you had to pivot. So what are you doing to make sure we have those tools and resources?
Yeah, so once again, it is all about being able to meet people where they are. And so we have done a number of things to ensure that, once again, people have access to healthcare. One of those ways is to make virtual healthcare possible. Obviously, some folks call it telemedicine, and so waiving copays for that, even for the behavioral health component as well. We think that's made a big difference for folks. We provided rewards programs for folks to be able to have anywhere from $300 to $500 per member that they can utilize on medical services or costs. It's hard to believe when we made that available, and a lot of people weren't taking advantage of it. And so we would call them and say, hey, listen, we have $500 for you. All you have to do is X, Y, Z. And often we'd have folks say, this is a prank call. Do not call me anymore. And we'd have to continue to just work at it. But it was to make certain that they were getting the things that they need. We made certain that we reduced 1 month premium for many of our customers by 15%. We made certain that we extended the time for people to pay their premium by several months, quite frankly. We even made it possible for them to have cost reductions and not having to worry about the cost of COVID-19 before it was mandated to do so. So that was, we're first out of the gate on that particular component. And so we believe things like that demonstrated to folks that they are extremely important to us. And by providing those kind of things, I think it really is a difference. This is, I think in many respects, and not just Florida Blue, but for any company, quite frankly, these are the opportunities by which to live your values, to live your promise to your customers. And so it is how you respond to these kind of very difficult situations that our customers are looking at, because that is how they define you as to whether or not it's truly who you are versus what you say you are. And so we work really hard to make certain that indeed we were living our values.
All right, thank you. And before we do our last final question, I'm going to do one more poll. And the poll question is going to be, I think I have it here. It is going to be, what has surprised you most about the pandemic? And this is for our audience. And our choices are disruption in the supply chain, especially with paper products. I don't know if anyone else experienced that in disinfectants. The duration of the pandemic, the controversy over wearing a mask, and changing attitudes towards telecommuting. Because I don't know if you remember when this, a lot of companies had kind of resisted letting people work from home. They thought they would slack off and they wouldn't do very well. And I think this has changed a lot of perceptions, because I don't know about anyone else. I've been working from home for years, and I'm much more productive, and probably I don't take as many breaks. I'm more focused. Like Darnell said, I have to force myself to make sure I stop for lunch and, take that time needed. So answer the poll, and I think we have results. So our top one is the duration of the pandemic. Some people are ready for it to be over. We are still, I'm with you on that. We're still working on that. The second one is the controversy over wearing a mask. I know I don't like wearing it either. It messes up my lipstick and everything else. But you know what? If it's being safe or being cute, safe is first, right? The next one is disruption in the supply chain. Thankfully, that seems to be easing up a little bit. And then the changing attitudes toward telecommuting. Thank you for answering the poll. And like I mentioned, this is going to be our last question. I'm going to ask you to answer this fairly quickly, and then we're going to go to question and answers from the audience. So I'm going to start. I'm going to go back into the order I did. Mike Anderson, what opportunities did the pandemic provide to improve your organization?
That's a great question. Chaos and opportunity are pretty close cousins. And I think that the pandemic revealed the opportunity to us to understand and get back in touch with how vital the work we do is. Local media company, stop and think about this. People had this insatiable appetite for information. Our programming and news departments did such a wonderful job, both on TV, over on radio. And so many folks, we found people tuning in to their favorite music format, kind of comfort food for the ears. So it reminded us of how essential the work we do is. And there's businesses all over the place that are trying to similarly serve and do what is most important to the constituents they serve now. What matters most and how can we help? And we get to connect those two. The tonnage, the volume of people we reach with the companies that serve them and keep our community high vitality. That's a gratifying thing. And what a great opportunity to be reminded, unfortunately, with this kind of a crisis, this kind of an issue, the pandemic, but to be reminded through this that you are doing really important work. Yeah. A lot of people depend on you, and that's not a bad opportunity. Right. I'll take that. So
that's important. We all need to feel needed, right? Whatever we're doing, we matter. Brad, I'm asking you the same question. What opportunities did the pandemic provide to improve your organization?
Hitting on the reference of virtual work versus or office work versus people on the front lines and field, really seeing that lack of connection throughout the process. We're all connected as business units and service providers in one form or fashion throughout the organization, but really seeing a shift of focus of how the interdependencies work so much between each other within the organization, from touching product to either touching someone from a customer service perspective over the phone, and making sure that we're bringing that real. So that's one of the things that really stands out to me the most, is how even for a 100-year-old company, we're still finding ways to enhance the culture that we have. And Darnell hit on the culture piece pretty earlier, that really speaks volumes to what this is all about in terms of bringing service and what your culture is really about. So that's the thing that really stands out most.
Okay, so it sounds like, put up or shut up, right? You gotta live, your actions gotta speak for you, right?
That's right. That's right.
Okay. All right, Michael, same question. What opportunities does the pandemic provide to improve your organization? So Visit Jacksonville, what are your opportunities here?
I think the opportunity that's come out of it so far is the opportunity for all of us to get closer together. When I say closer together, I'm talking about both the Visit Jacksonville team that works on the same goal, but really it's bigger than that. It's the entire industry. When things are going great, you don't really need anybody. You got this, I got this. But when things get tough, you start circling back together. I've had so many really good conversations with leaders in the various different sectors of our tourism economy that have called me up and said, how are you doing? And I'm calling others and saying, how are you doing? And what can we do to help? The appreciation of the various different entities that are involved and make up this entire body. And I think is really good. Visit Jacksonville actually moved in the middle of the pandemic. And thank you to Brad and his team for making it a very simple move for us. But we physically changed locations during the move. And literally we were in our new location for about 90 days and nobody in my organization had seen it. Myself and my COO are the only ones that had seen the new facility, because it wasn't safe at that point. So it was important for us for me as a leader to share, what are you going to have as you come out of this pandemic, and what are you going to be returning to, and how is that safe? And Darnell said this earlier, communication is the key to all of this. And it's really, obviously it's how does it affect your work, but most of us have a support group of family or friends, but what you can forget, and you have to remember, I think always, is there's a lot of people that are by themselves and all they have is that work family or that industry family. And it's so important to stay connected with them. And I've seen that growth of our team grow together closer. I mean, it's a team of 20 people, which is really, really small, but the closeness we have now, although we're working remotely, we're a lot closer as a work family than we were before.
All right. Thank you, Michael. And Darnell, for you, what opportunities did the pandemic provide to improve your organization?
I would say the biggest opportunity that I saw was the chance to continue to increase the level of collaboration with our provider, hospital, physician partners as we, continue to move forward. Keep in mind, they were just extraordinary through this entire process. They had to truly focus on taking care of people's lives, had to make certain that the essential services that they typically would provide, they had to, put those aside. That had a financial impact on them. And so as it did, quite frankly, those are situations where revenue that they would have had coming in was no longer there. Here they are with their employees doing just miraculous and fantastic work every day. And the last thing they needed was to have hurdles to be able to get work done. And so, as we have typically things like authorizations and all those kind of things that you would have to go through in order to be able to get certain services. And so we were able to relax a number of those kind of opportunities there, quite frankly, making certain that we're getting their payment to them as quickly as possible, and just learning so much more what to do. We work closely from a virtual healthcare perspective with our physician and hospital partners. And so I think it allowed us to really understand how to be even of more value to each other. I do believe in most cases we work really, really well together already. But this presented, quite frankly, something very new. to us as an industry, and required us to just really take our relationship to a different level in order to make certain that we were taking care of members and patients alike.
All right. Thank you, Darnell. And I believe that we are going to be, I think there are some questions from our audience. And so Jill Johnson's going to let us know what questions, and I'll direct them to a panelist.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Norfleet. Hi, everyone. I'm Jill Johnson with Florida State College at Jacksonville. Happy to join you here today. We do have several questions from the audience. The first question is, while working remotely, employees have been challenged by learning to conduct homeschooling of their children. Have you done anything that helped your employees cope with this additional responsibility?
And I'm going to direct this question to Darnell, because I know you have a really large company and you all had to go remote. So.
Yeah, thank you so much. And probably a lot like my panel partners here as well. But I would just share with you, it is about meeting folks where they are. We probably provided, for the most part, flexibility and understanding. Of course, people come to work to really make a living and to take care of their families. And so we don't lose sight of that. It is all about being able to take care of your family. And so here you are in a situation where you have to take care of your family and take care of work. And in many respects, we just simply said, we get it. You may not be as in the moment from a work standpoint as you'd like to be, because you have to be prepared and there for your family. And we trusted them to make the right choices and allowed them that flexibility and that understanding. We require our leaders to connect and understand the issues and to be as flexible as possible. And so often we found ourselves where somebody might not have been able to be a part of a meeting or be a part of a situation that they otherwise would have been there because they needed to be there for a child trying to learn and things of that sort. And so I think that's the greatest thing that we've been able to do is to provide the flexibility and understanding. And it's worked, because I can tell you that, quite frankly, our employees, because of that trust, they have delivered. They've given more above and beyond, because they understand that we were there for them and they're there for our customers. And it works every time. For some companies, that's counterintuitive. I don't understand that, but I would tell you, it is about making certain that you make them first.
Right. Sounds like you empowered your employees and they just really stepped up to the plate.
Absolutely.
All right. All right, Jill, next question.
All right, thank you. The next question is, what things have you done to help with team building in a virtual environment?
All right, Brad, I'm going to direct this one to you. So what has Seth done to promote team building in a virtual environment?
Some of the things that other business leaders, unlike myself, have done, because I'm not really good at that piece. It's something I've got to work on. But there have been kind of trivia nights that are kind of after hours or whatnot and things like that, just to go across business units and to just open the forum to get access to certain people within the organization as well, whether that's top down or bottom up. And the feedback on that has been pretty surprising, right? So again, we trust people and have respect for good intentions for everybody, and it's been a lot of fun, and the engagement level of people that are participating or even hearing about that participation is pretty interesting to see in here in the ancillary chat that goes on as well. So again, we enabled people to be professionals. We've trusted them for managing their time, but then we've also opened it up for them to experiment and have some fun with each other as well.
All right. Michael, I know you said you had a small team of 20. Have you done anything as far as for team building?
Sure. We definitely have. I mean, remember, our job is to invite people to come to Jacksonville. So before we can invite people to come to Jacksonville, we have to be comfortable going out into Jacksonville. So I met with my team virtually one day and told them, I said, you know, do we think we're ready to invite people to come to Jacksonville? And the resounding yes from my entire team. And I told them, I said, okay, how do we start? And they were some of my employees that were very nervous. And I said, until we're comfortable going out in the community, then it's not going to happen. So I talked to my wife about it. And the first thing we did to build the team back up is we literally just put tables socially distanced in my backyard and invited my employees to come to my backyard. I said, come to my house, let's have lunch. And, you know, we did a lunch with them. And that's the luxury you have when you have a small team. It was easy to do that, but it got them comfortable with seeing each other face to face again. And then it began the process. I said, you know, will you meet me for breakfast? Will you meet me for a lunch? And started doing small 2-employee type meetings, always social distance, always wearing the PPE that should be worn. But it did 2 things. One is it showed the community that Visit Jacksonville was ready to promote you again. And then it showed my employees that how important it was. The most satisfying part of that for me was I have an aide here who's very, very timid. And after about a week of that, she walked in my office and she said, thank you. And I said, what do you mean, thank you? And she said, I had not left my house since this started. Everything was delivered. But when you reminded me that my job was welcoming people to town and I should figure out how we're going to be able to do that safely. She goes, I took a chance, and I'm still nervous when I do it, but I'm comfortable, and I've done it without it being a work thing. So we feel like we're making progress in that aspect.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Jill, next question.
All right, thank you. Will working from home be the new way of work moving forward, or do you think people will go back to the office?
Okay, I'm going to do, I know, Mike, you said you've been working from home for years, so you can't answer that question. I'm going to do this probably to Darnell or Brad. Which one? Darnell, you going to take it? Okay.
Brad, why don't you take it first, my friend, and I'll follow.
All right, no problem. You know, it's a really interesting question. We're struggling with it as an organization. So we're probably a company of 1,200 people, and at times in peak season, probably spiking up to 2,500 people, right? And a combination of field associates, warehouse workers, truck drivers, and then a pretty significant office staff, right? So there's already a dichotomy of those that are able to work from home and those that aren't, right? And getting, you know, making sure that we've got the foundation of the company culture still intact. Senior leadership has a desire to get everybody back to work, right, to set a tone. But at the same time, I think we've heard it from a number of people here, allowing the flexibility and allowing our folks to be professional and trusting them to make great decisions on behalf of service to our customers. I think we're just beginning to see what that's going to turn into. I've had a number of people give me feedback on the flexibility has allowed me to connect better with my customers. I'm not rushed to where I have to do it between 8 and 5, and I'm in Jacksonville and my customers in Seattle, right? And so it's allowed us to connect in different ways. Through the enablement with technology and our willingness to let people be flexible and be okay with it. We're measuring customer service levels. We've seen no declines, right? We've seen good engagement from our people and look forward to seeing more of that feedback come. So I do think it is the new normal, right? And companies have to be ready to adjust to that.
Okay, thank you. Darnell, you want to say a few comments on that?
Yeah, I think Brad nailed it. And so first, let me share with you that I now work from home, and so adds new meaning to I want to be like Mike. And, so, and I'm absolutely like Mike Anderson now. You know, I will share with you that, you know, it's like anything else where you have a new normal and something has been experienced or an innovation has been provided. Going back to that which you used to do is going to be very difficult. And so, quite frankly, I believe that what you're going to find, because keep in mind, in many respects, people did not work from home or work remotely in the past. In many regards, leaders would believe that if I can't see you, you're not working.
Right.
And there will be a lack of trust and so many other things. And I think this situation has proven that that just is not the case. And so I don't see us going back 100% with employees being in a a location in a building. And so I think that's going to be a major shift that we have to think through as not just Florida Blue, I mean, truly across the country. And so the question you got to ask yourself is, what does that then mean? Because you're going to have a number of buildings that might not be as occupied as they have been in the past, because you're going to have situations where employers are going to have a good portion of their employees working remotely and a number of their employees working on site. And so I think it's going to present a very different dynamic as a result of that. But I do not believe we'll find ourselves where we have an on-site work environment to a large degree. And I think the other thing that presents as a challenge, or at least a great opportunity, is to understand how to truly manage your culture where everybody's not in one place or mostly in one place, that you have to do it remotely, and people can be anywhere in the world, quite frankly, in order to carry out very important assignments, et cetera. And it's about still being able to manage that culture. It happens. People have done it. Organizations have done it for years. There are global companies, and international companies that do that extremely. It's going to require local companies to understand how to be able to benefit from that. And I think that's what we're going to see for a lot of folks in order to how to step up and be there for their employees.
All right, thanks, Darnell. I think you're right on the head. I work for several global companies and trying to coordinate with people in England and France and different things like that. We had a lot of flexibility, and I think that's what's needed now. All right, Jill, next question.
All right, thank you. I think this might be the last question we have time for, but I do have a few more questions, so we'll try to get through those as quickly as possible. Might the changes we are seeing in how we live and work, especially the proliferation of virtual activity, change anything in what you're looking for in a newly trained employee or newly trained employees? In other words, any thoughts or considerations on that FSCJ should think about in preparing people in terms of general skills?
All right. And Mike Anderson, I'm going to actually address this to you since you do consumer behaviors and see, is there anything that you can share with us on what does the future employee look like? What should FSCJ in particular be looking for their future employees?
Sure, this hitchhikes beautifully on the last question. What kept a lot of people, a lot of companies from having a remote workforce was unknown. They feared the unknown. They didn't know how that would work. Well, now we know, so get over it. You know who's going to survive, who's not, who's going to function well in this environment, and who's not. And I think that it absolutely puts a twist on the skill set that the labor economy is going to expect when product comes out of the factory that is higher education. I mean, you're going to need to have people that have the capacity to adapt quickly and move forward. You know, I think that anytime there's this weird economy that as a result of the pandemic is going on, companies are looking for things they can do without. We're looking for places we can cut without hurting the organization and without hurting our capabilities, retaining our firepower, but as efficiently as we can. With that in mind, you know, what you're looking at, the way you evaluate everything is, was this just a process that we were accustomed to, or is there a purpose? What's the process and what's the purpose? If this is a process that does not serve the purpose, why are we doing it? And I think that speaks right to education as well. It's not, I don't think going forward, I don't think it's about just the diploma, the piece of paper that said I got this done. People are going to school to retool and to add a capacity, a capability to their own weaponry, so that they are suited not to just survive in a new workplace, but to thrive in it. So, you know, I think companies absolutely, and this speaks to, we do a lot of work in talent assessment and talent development, finding the most powerful talents within an individual and getting out of the way so that they can do a lot of what they're really good at. And I think that it's going to be an imperative for every organization to think that way. Get off your process. A lot of it just doesn't matter. What's the point? What's the purpose? And I think that anybody who's enrolled in higher education right now, hope you're thinking that way, because that's who they're going to be hunting for.
All right.
I hope that answers the question.
That was a great answer.
Wendy, can I add real quick?
Sure.
I'm a proud FSCJ graduate decades ago. And when I went to FSCJ, or back then FJC, I had no idea what I was going to do. I mean, I had no direction at all. But that's one of the great things about FSCJ is if you go and just immerse yourself in that experience and the amazing staff they have there that are helping you learn, you can go anywhere. I never dreamed I'd be president of Visit Jacksonville one day back when I attended FSCJ, but I embraced that experience and I learned from it, and I continue to have friends that I met there that I work with on a regular basis. So you know, I would tell many people that you got to figure out what that is, but don't be afraid to take that first step and start learning.
All right, thank you for that. Jill, I think we might have time for one more question. What do you think?
I think that's great. So this question is directed at Brad. He mentioned he moves people. Has he realized a decrease of people movement or an increase? And what does he see for the mobility of people in the future?
You got all that, Brad?
Yes, ma'am. It's a great question. You know, we've been people moving for a century or so, and I think the thing that we saw mostly in this year, right, the traditional moving season for people movement is when people are out of school, and all of us were disrupted at the end of the school year, beginning of summer and whatnot. And so our peak for that activity shifted back probably 2 to 3 months for most markets. Now, we have seen dramatic slowdowns in global mobility as well across the organization, but it is starting to come back, right? So the activity level is pushed back into later part of the year, which then challenges us in terms of what does that mean for peak season for our other product lines, and when will peak happen next year as well. So as we're forecasting for next year and going through that exercise, it's really complicated in terms of knowing where we're going to head with this. People are going to continue to move. Businesses are going to continue to need certain levels of organizations to be in certain markets, in market, right? We still see that is certainly viable, but the amount that people move, how frequent they move is what is changing, right? So.
All right. Thank you very much. Jill, I think our time is out. Or do we have one more? I think we must be out. Okay. All right. First of all, I want to thank all the panelists. I really appreciate you being here. I hope that we've helped people kind of explain how we're reshaping Jacksonville and giving us this opportunity. And once again, thank you. It is also my honor and privilege to introduce Brent Lister, the president and CEO of First Florida Credit Union. This whole thing would not have taken place without their support. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us today at our first ever virtual FSCJ Business Series event. My name is Brent Lister, and I'm the president and CEO of First Florida Credit Union. First, I want to thank our moderator, Dr. Wendy Norfleet, and our incredible panelists today, and for their important insight. The past few months have been a challenging time for everybody, and it's inspiring to hear how your businesses have remained flexible and focused on staying safe and navigating these changes. One of the things I love about the business series is that it connects business experts directly with students and budding business leaders alike, providing an educational and professional development opportunity and experience that is unique. The series truly embodies First Florida Credit Union's mission of enriching people every day. Together with Florida State College at Jacksonville, we look forward to making our mission reality no matter what the circumstance. We hope you'll join us for more events as we bring other workplace opportunities or discussions closer to home and involving the community that we serve, as well as that we belong to here in Jacksonville and throughout the 5 county areas. Thank you again for our panelists, or thank you again to all of our panelists. What a wonderful discussion group, and our moderator, and Florida State College at Jacksonville to making this possible. I encourage everyone to go out and visit fscj.edu/business-speakers to stay updated about our future events. Once again, thank you for attending this event. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and have a great rest of the week. Have a great day.